The shuttle landed with a soft bump on the stone platform. Lieutenant Park grabbed her bag and stepped out into the cold morning air of Prime. The sky was purple here, not blue like Earth. Two small suns hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the ground. Took a deep breath. The air smelled different, sharp and clean, like snow on a mountain. She had traveled 4 months through space to reach this place. The Galactic Coalition's bonding academy, the most famous training center in the known galaxy, and she was the first human ever allowed inside. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt small. A group of guards stood waiting near the platform edge. They were tall creatures, almost 2 meters high when standing on their back legs. Their bodies were covered in silver-blue fur that moved gently in the wind. Their eyes were amber, bright like fire, and they watched with expressions she could not read. They looked like wolves from Earth, but they were not wolves. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They had built empires when humans were still living in caves. They had traveled between stars when humans were still afraid of the dark. And they did not like visitors. One of the guards stepped forward. He wore a red band around his arm, marking him as a senior officer. His fur was darker than the others almost, and a long scar ran across his face from ear to jaw. "Human," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "Follow." He did not wait for her answer. He simply turned and walked toward the main building. Followed, her boots clicking against the stone path. The other guards fell in behind her, their footsteps silent. The academy was massive. Stone walls rose high into the sky, covered with carvings of running wolves and hunting scenes. Windows glowed with warm light. In the distance, could hear sounds that might have been howling or singing or something in between. They walked for 10 minutes through long hallways and up winding stairs. Finally, the guard stopped before a large wooden door. He knocked twice, then pushed it open. "The human has arrived," he announced. The room inside was warm and filled with the smell of burning wood. A fire crackled in a stone fireplace against the far wall. Shelves lined every surface, packed with books and scrolls and strange objects did not recognize. And there, sitting behind a massive desk, was Grandmother Nara. Had seen pictures of the academy director during her training on Earth, but pictures did not capture the reality. Grandmother Nara was old, very old. Her fur had turned almost completely white and her amber eyes had faded to a pale gold. But there was power in her. Could feel it pressing against her skin like heat from a fire. "Lieutenant Park," Grandmother Nara said. Her voice was soft but carried easily across the room. "You have come a long way." Straightened her back. "Yes, Director, I am honored to be here." "Honored?" The old made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is a polite word. Let me speak with less politeness. You are here because your government pushed very hard. They want a human presence in our academy. They want to show the galaxy that your species belongs among the stars." She stood slowly, her joints cracking. She was smaller than had expected, bent by age, but her eyes were sharp as she walked around the desk. "I disagreed with this decision," Grandmother Nara continued. "I told the council that humans are not ready. You are too young as a species, too soft, too emotional. You form bonds based on feeling, not on purpose. You let your hearts control your minds." She stopped in front of, close enough that could see every line in her aged face. "They have trained our young alongside bonded handlers for 10,000 years. We have traditions, rules, a way of doing things that has worked since before your ancestors discovered fire. And now your government wants to change all of that. They want a human handler." Kept her face calm. "I am here to learn, Director, not to change anything." "Good, because you will not be a handler." Grandmother Nara turned and walked back to her desk. "You will observe. You will watch. You will write your little reports and send them back to Earth. But you will not touch our cubs. You will not enter our training grounds. You will stay behind the glass where you belong." The words hit like a slap. She had trained for 3 years for this assignment. She had studied culture, learned their language, passed every test they threw at her. And now she was being told to sit in a box and watch through a window. "Director," she started. "This is not a discussion." Grandmother Nara sat down heavily in her chair. "The council allowed you to come. They did not allow you to participate. There is a difference." She pressed a button on her desk. The door behind opened and the guard entered. "Sergeant will show you to your quarters," Grandmother Nara said. "The observation deck is on the 3rd floor. You may begin your work tomorrow morning. Do not go anywhere else without permission. Do not speak to the cubs. Do not interfere with training. Do you understand?" His hands tightened at her sides. She wanted to argue. She wanted to fight. But she had been trained for this. She knew when a battle could not be won. "I understand, Director." "Good, then we have nothing more to discuss." Followed Sergeant out of the office and down another long hallway. Her room was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a window looking out over the training grounds. She could see the field from here, a wide open space of grass and dirt surrounded by high walls. "Food will be brought to you at the proper times," Sergeant said from the doorway. "The observation deck opens at dawn. Do not leave your room at night." Then he was gone. Sat on the edge of her bed and looked out the window. The 2 suns were setting now, painting the purple sky with streaks of orange and red. On the training field below, she could see small shapes moving. Cubs, young, playing and fighting and learning. They were beautiful. Even from this distance, she could see their silver fur shining in the fatting light. They moved like water, flowing and fast. She watched one small cub chase another across the grass, tumbling over each other in a pile of fur and teeth. And for the first time since landing on Prime, smiled. She had been told to observe. Fine, she would observe. But Park had never been good at following rules. She had grown up in the crowded streets of the youngest of 5 children, fighting for every scrap of attention. She had joined the military when everyone told her she was too small. She had applied for this program when everyone told her she would fail. And now she was here, behind glass, watching. But watching could be its own kind of learning, and was very good at learning. She pulled her notebook from her bag and began to write. Notes about the academy, about Grandmother Nara, about the cubs playing on the field below. Tomorrow, she would begin watching properly. She would learn everything there was to know about thee and their bonding rituals. And someday, somehow, she would find a way to show them that humans were not too soft. Someday she would prove them all wrong. The suns disappeared below the horizon. The cubs were called inside, and sat alone in her small room planning. 3 weeks passed, learned the rhythm of the academy like a song. Every morning she woke before the suns rose. She dressed in the plain uniform they had given her. She ate the simple food that was left outside her door, and then she walked to the observation deck on the 3rd floor. The deck was a long room with walls made entirely of glass. From here, she could see the entire training ground below. She could watch the cubs learn to hunt, to fight, to work together as a pack. She could see the handlers moving among them, teaching and correcting and shaping. And she could do nothing but watch. At first it was frustrating, pressed her hands against the cold glass and wished she could be down there. She saw handlers make mistakes. She saw cubs struggle with lessons that could be taught in simpler ways. She wanted to help. She wanted to fix things. But slowly, she began to understand why she had been placed here. She could see everything, every movement, every interaction, every small detail that the handlers on the ground might miss. She began to notice patterns. She began to understand how they thought, how they taught, how they loved. Because they did love. That was the thing that surprised her most. They pretended to be cold. They spoke of tradition and discipline and proper form, but watched how the handlers touched the cubs when no one was watching. Gentle brushes of fur against fur. Soft sounds that were not quite words. the way a handler would curl around a frightened cub during a thunderstorm. They loved, they just showed it differently than humans. Filled notebook after notebook with her observations. She drew diagrams of training exercises. She wrote down words and phrases she heard through the speakers that connected to the field. She studied everything. And she watched the spring cohort. There were 12 cubs in this group, all born within the same month. They had arrived at the academy 6 weeks ago, taken from their mothers and brought here to begin their training. In 2 more weeks, they would participate in the first walk, the ceremony where cubs chose their handlers for life. Knew all 12 cubs by heart now. She had given them names in her head, even though she was not supposed to. There was the big male with the loud voice. She called him Thunder. There was the fast female who always won the races. She called her Arrow. There was the clever one who figured out puzzles before anyone else. She called him Puzzle. But 3 cubs did not have such happy names. Bora was small, too small. Born last in her litter, she had not grown as quickly as the others, and there was something wrong with her back leg. It was twisted, bent at a strange angle. She limped when she walked and could not run at all. The handlers rarely called on her during training. The other cubs pushed her away during meals. Was different in another way. His fur was wrong. All cubs were born with silver-blue fur, but's fur was dark, almost black. Among the dark fur was considered bad luck, a sign of sickness or weakness. The handlers avoided touching him. The other cubs growled when he came near. And then there was the smallest of all, even smaller than Bora. But her size was not the problem. The problem was her eyes. All had amber eyes, but's eyes were different. One was amber, bright and normal. The other was pale blue, almost white. It made her look strange, wrong, broken. Watched these 3 cubs every day. She saw them pushed to the edges of every game. She saw them eating last, sleeping alone, walking without friends. She saw the pain in their eyes, even though they tried to hide it. And her heart broke for them. On the morning of the first walk, arrived at the observation deck before dawn. She pressed her face against the glass and watched as the handlers prepared the field. They set up markers and flags. They raked the grass until it was smooth. They did everything with careful precision. The first walk was the most important day in a cub's life. Today, they would choose their handlers. Today, they would begin the bond that would last until death. The cubs were brought out at sunrise. All 12 of them walked onto the field in a line, their small bodies trembling with excitement and fear. They knew what today meant. They had been told stories about this moment since they were born. Then the handlers entered. There were 7 of them, all young, strong, and proud, wearing the green bands of new handlers. They walked to the center of the field and stood in a circle, waiting. The rules of the first walk were simple. The cubs would approach the handlers on their own. They would sniff the air, reading the pheromones and energy of each handler. And when a cub found the right match, they would press their body against the handler's leg. That was the bond. Simple and forever. Watched as the cubs spread out across the field. Some moved quickly, running from handler to handler. Others were slow, careful, taking their time to choose. One by one, cubs found their matches. One by one, handlers bent down to touch the small heads pressing against them. Within an hour, 9 cubs had bonded. 3 had not. Bora sat in the corner of the field, her twisted legs stretched out beside her. She had tried to approach the handlers at the beginning. She had limped toward them with hope in her eyes, but they had stepped away from her. All of them, one by one. Stood near the wall, his dark fur making him look like a shadow. He had not even tried to approach. He knew what would happen. He had seen the fear in the handlers' eyes when they looked at him. Had tried the longest. She had walked up to every handler, looking at them with her strange, mismatched eyes, but each one had turned away. Each one had refused to meet her gaze. Now the 3 rejected cubs huddled together in the far corner. Bora was shaking. His head was low, made small sounds that might have been crying. The three remaining handlers circled them once, twice. Then they walked back to the gate without looking back. His hands pressed hard against the glass. Her breath fogged the surface in front of her. She could not believe what she was seeing. A speaker crackled above her head. Grandmother Nara's voice filled the observation deck. The first walk is complete. 9 bonds have been formed. 3 cubs remain unclaimed. There was no emotion in her voice. The unclaimed will be sent to the labor camps tomorrow morning. They will serve thee as workers, not warriors. This is the way. Felt something hot rise in her chest, anger pure and bright. The labor camps, she had heard about them, places where unbonded spent their lives doing hard work, building, carrying, serving. It was not a cruel life, but it was not a free one either. These cubs would never run, never hunt, never feel the joy of a true bond. Because no one wanted them. Because they were broken. Looked down at the 3 small shapes huddled in the corner. Bora. They had been alive for 6 months. They had done nothing wrong. They had simply been born different. And now their lives were over before they had even begun. The door of the observation deck was behind her. She turned and looked at it. A simple door. Metal. There was a lock on the inside, a small red light showing it was secure. Walked toward it. She did not know what she was going to do. She did not have a plan. She just knew that she could not stand behind this glass for one more second while 3 children were thrown away like garbage. She reached for the lock. The light was red. But when she touched it, the light turned green. The door clicked open. Stood there for a long moment, her heart pounding in her chest. The door should have been locked from the outside. That was what Sergeant had said. She was not supposed to be able to leave. But the door was open now, and had never been good at following rules. The stairs were empty. The hallways were silent. Everyone was at the field, watching the end of the ceremony. No one expected the human to leave her cage. Moved quickly. Her boots were soft against the stone floor. She had memorized the path from her window, counting doors and turns. Left at the first corner, right at the second, down 2 flights of stairs, through the small courtyard with the broken fountain. And then she was there, the gate to the training field. It was made of heavy iron, decorated with the shapes of running wolves. 2 guards stood on either side, their backs to her. They were watching the field, not the door behind them. Took a deep breath. She pushed the gate open. The metal creaked loudly. Both guards spun around, their amber eyes going wide with shock. "Human," one of them said, "what are you doing?" Did not answer. She walked past them onto the field. The grass was soft under her feet. The morning air was cold on her face. She could feel the eyes of everyone turning toward her. The handlers, the bonded cubs, Grandmother Nara standing on a raised platform near the far wall. But did not look at any of them. She looked only at the 3 small shapes huddled in the corner. Bora. They looked up as she approached. Their eyes were wet with tears they were trying not to show. They pressed closer together, afraid of this strange creature walking toward them. Stopped 3 meters away. She could hear voices behind her, shouting, confusion, but she did not turn around. Slowly, carefully, she lowered herself to the ground. She sat cross-legged in the dirt, making herself small, making herself unthreatening. And she waited. The speaker crackled to life. Grandmother Nara's voice was ice cold. "Human, return to your station immediately. You are violating every rule of this academy. You are interfering with sacred tradition. Return now, or you will be removed by force." Did not move. The 3 cubs watched her. Bora's small body was shaking. His dark fur was standing up along his spine. His mismatched eyes were fixed on his face. "I am not here to hurt you," said softly. She kept her voice low and gentle. "I am not here to force you. I am just here. That is all." She did not reach out. She did not move forward. She simply sat in the dirt and waited. Seconds passed, then minutes. The shouting behind her grew louder. She heard footsteps approaching, guards coming to drag her away. And then moved. It was just one step, a small step with her small feet, but it was a step toward, not away. The footsteps behind stopped. Took another step. Her mismatched eyes never left face. She was sniffing the air, reading something that could not understand. Her nose twitched. Her ears moved forward. Another step. And another. And then was running. She crashed into his chest with enough force to push the human backward. Her small body was warm and soft. Her fur smelled like grass and rain. She pressed her head against heart and made a sound that was somewhere between a whimper and a song. Wrapped her arms around the small cub. Tears were running down her face, but she did not care. Movement at the edge of her vision. Bora was moving now too. Her twisted leg made her slow, made her clumsy, but she did not stop. She limped across the grass with determination in every step. She reached and pressed against her side, her small body shaking. Was last. He did not run. He walked slowly, circling once, twice. His dark eyes were cautious. He had been hurt before. He did not trust easily. But something in his face must have spoken to him. Something in her scent. Something in the way she held the other two cubs without trying to control them. Lay down behind, pressing his dark fur against her back, guarding her, protecting her. 3 cubs, 1 human, a bond that should have been impossible. The entire field was silent. Looked up. Grandmother Nara was staring down at her from the platform. The old's face was unreadable, but her hands were gripping the railing so hard that her knuckles had turned white. "This is unacceptable," Grandmother Nara said. Her voice carried across the silent field. "The human has violated our sacred traditions. She has corrupted the first walk. This bond is not real. It cannot be real." Held the cubs closer. She could feel their hearts beating against her body, fast and frightened but also hopeful. "They chose me," said. Her voice was stronger than she expected. "Isn't that the law? Isn't that what the first walk is about? The cubs choose their handlers. No one forces them. No one decides for them. The cubs choose." Grandmother Nara's eyes narrowed. The law was written for bonds, not for this corruption. "The law says the cubs choose," repeated. "It does not say the cubs must choose it does not say the handler must be perfect. It says the cubs choose, and these cubs chose me." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some of the handlers were nodding slowly, others looked confused, a few looked angry. Grandmother Nara raised her hand, and the murmuring stopped. "You are not a handler," she said. "You are an observer. You have no right to stand on this field. You have no right to touch our cubs. You have no right to claim a bond that belongs to our people." Looked down at the 3 small bodies pressed against her. Bora had stopped shaking. His fur was smooth now, relaxed, was making small happy sounds against his chest. "I did not claim anything," said. "They came to me. I just did not walk away." She looked up again, meeting Grandmother Nara's cold gaze. "Your handlers did, every single one of them. They looked at these cubs and they walked away. They decided these children were not worth their time. They decided these children were broken." Her voice grew harder. "But I looked at them and I saw something different. I saw 3 cubs who needed someone to believe in them, 3 cubs who needed someone to stay, and I stayed." The silence stretched. The 2 suns climbed higher in the purple sky. The wind moved gently across the grass. Grandmother Nara studied for a long moment. Then she turned to the crowd. "Clear the field," she ordered. "All handlers and bonded cubs will return to the dormitories. The Council of Elders will convene within the hour to address this situation." She looked back at, "You will remain here with the cubs. Guards will ensure you do not leave. If you attempt to escape, you will be arrested and deported immediately. Do you understand?" Nodded. "I understand." Grandmother Nara turned and walked away. The crowd slowly emptied from the field. Soon, only and the three cubs remained, surrounded by a circle of guards. Bora shifted against the side and looked up at her with wide amber eyes. "What happens now?" the small cub seemed to ask. Stroked her silver fur gently. "I don't know," she admitted, "but whatever happens, I am not leaving you, I promise." Pressed closer, rumbled softly behind her. Bora closed her eyes and relaxed. The suns moved across the sky. The wind continued to blow, and sat in the middle of the empty field, holding three broken cubs who had chosen her over everything else. She did not know what the council would decide. She did not know if she would be allowed to stay. She did not know anything about what came next. But she knew one thing for certain. She had found her pack, and she would fight for them until her last breath. The council chamber was carved from a single piece of black stone. Ancient symbols covered the walls, telling stories of history that stretched back thousands of years. Torches burned in iron holders, casting flickering shadows across the floor. Stood in the center of the room, the three cubs pressed against her legs, refusing to be separated. Every time the guards had tried to take them away, the cubs had howled so loudly that the walls shook. Finally, the guards had given up. 12 elders sat in a half-circle before her. They were all old, their fur white or with age. Their eyes were pale gold, faded by time but still sharp with wisdom. Grandmother Nara sat in the center, the highest seat. "Let the record show that this hearing has begun," Grandmother Nara said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "The matter before us is the illegal bonding between the human known as Lieutenant Park and three cubs of the spring cohort." An elder to her left leaned forward. His fur was pure white, and his name was Grandfather. "The bond is not illegal," he growled. "It is impossible. Humans cannot form true bonds with cubs. Their biology is wrong. Their minds are wrong. Whatever connection this human believes she has made, it is nothing more than an illusion." Another elder, a female named Grandmother, shook her head slowly. "The law of first choosing is clear," she said. "A cub chooses their handler by pressing against them. The cubs pressed against the human. By our own law, the bond exists." "The law was written for," Grandfather snapped. "It was never meant to include aliens. The human corrupted the ritual with her presence. She entered the field without permission. She interfered with sacred tradition." The elders began arguing among themselves. Voices rose and fell. Hands pointed and waved. Stood quietly in the center, waiting. Finally, Grandmother Nara raised her hand. Silence fell immediately. "The arguments have been heard," she said, "but there is only one question that matters." She looked directly at, "Can you raise warriors?" Met her gaze, "Yes." "How?" Grandmother Nara asked. "You are not strong enough. A handler must be able to run 40 kilometers without rest. You cannot do this. You are not fast enough. A handler must be able to catch prey in the wild. You cannot do this. You do not understand our ways. You do not speak our language properly. You do not know our history, our traditions, our songs." She stood slowly from her seat. "More than that, these cubs are broken. The female with the twisted leg will never run. The male with dark fur brings bad luck wherever he goes. The female with strange eyes cannot see properly. No handler wanted them because they are not worth wanting." The words hung in the air like poison. Bora whimpered against Slag. His fur bristled with anger, pressed closer, hiding her mismatched eyes against thigh. Something hot and bright rose in his chest. She had listened politely. She had waited her turn. But now it was time to speak. "You are right," she said. Her voice was calm but strong. "I am not strong like a, I am not fast like a, I do not know all your traditions or all your songs." She looked down at the three cubs pressed against her. "And these cubs are not perfect. Bora cannot run. His fur is different. Eyes are strange. By your standards they are broken. By your standards they are worthless." She looked up again. meeting Grandmother Nara's eyes without fear. "But your standards are wrong." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several elders rose from their seats in anger, but kept talking. "I have watched your training for 3 weeks. I have seen how you teach. I have seen what you value: strength, speed, perfection. These are good things, but they are not the only things." She knelt down, putting herself at eye level with the cubs. "Bora cannot run, but have you ever watched her climb? Her front legs are the strongest I have ever seen. She pulls herself up surfaces that other cubs cannot even grip. She does not need to run if she can climb." She touched Darkfur gently. "Sfur is dark, you call it bad luck. But in the shadows in the night he is invisible. He moves without being seen. He hears things before anyone else. He is not cursed. He is a scout, a hunter in the dark." She looked into his mismatched eyes. "And you think her eyes are broken because one is the wrong color, but I have watched her. She sees things the other cubs miss. She sees heat in the air. She sees movement in the shadows. Her different eyes are not a weakness. They are a gift." Stood up slowly. "These cubs are not broken. They are different. And different is not the same as worthless. Someone just needed to look at them long enough to see it." The chamber was silent. The elders stared at her, some with anger, some with confusion, a few with something that might have been respect. Grandmother Nara remained standing. Her face was impossible to read. "Pretty words," she said finally, "but words mean nothing without proof." She turned to the other elders. "The law of first choosing cannot be. The cubs made their choice. But the law also says that any handler must prove their worth, and for that we have the trial." She looked back at, 3 moons from now, you and your cubs will face the warrior's path. 20 kilometers through the mountains, across frozen rivers, through combat zones. If you complete the path, the bond will be recognized. You will be a handler. The cubs will be warriors." Her voice grew cold. "If you fail, the bond will be severed. The cubs will be sent to the labor camps, and you will be expelled from space forever. You will never see them again." Felt her heart beating hard in her chest. 20 kilometers of mountain terrain. She had run marathons on Earth, but that was on flat ground with proper equipment. This would be something else entirely. But what choice did she have? "I accept," she said. Grandmother Nara nodded slowly. "Then it is decided. You will have 3 moons to prepare. You will train with your cubs every day. You will learn to work as a pack or you will fail." She waved her hand. "Guards, take the human and her cubs to the training quarters. Give them what they need. Let them prepare." The guards moved forward, put her hand on Bora's head, steadying the small cub. "Come on," she whispered. "We have work to do." As they walked toward the door, Grandmother Nara's voice followed them. "Human." Stopped and turned. The old was watching her with those pale gold eyes. For just a moment, something flickered across her face, something that was not anger or contempt. "No one has ever spoken to this council the way you just did," Grandmother Nara said. "Most would have begged, most would have promised anything, but you told us we were wrong." She paused. "Perhaps you are not as soft as I thought. Perhaps there is something in you worth watching." She sat back down in her chair. "Do not fail, human, for your sake and theirs." Nodded once. Then she walked out of the chamber with her 3 cubs pressed against her legs. 3 moons. 90 days. It was not a long time, but it was enough. It had to be enough. The morning of the trial was cold. Frost covered the training grounds and the 2 suns hung low on the horizon, giving little warmth. Stood at the starting line of the warrior's path, her 3 cubs pressed close to her legs. 3 months had changed them all. Bora was still small, still limping, but her front legs had grown thick with muscle, had trained her every day on the climbing walls, pushing her higher and faster. Now the little cub could scale a vertical cliff in seconds, pulling herself up with strength that surprised everyone who watched. Had learned to use his darkness. At night, he was invisible. He moved through shadows like water through cracks, had taught him to scout, to watch, to warn. He could hear enemies coming from a kilometer away. He could see movement that others missed. And had discovered her gift. Her strange eyes were not broken. They could see heat. Every living thing glowed in her vision, bright against the cold background of the world. She could track prey through fog. She could spot hidden dangers that no one else could find. They were not perfect, but they were a pack, and a pack was stronger than any single wolf. Had changed too. 3 months of training had pushed her body to its limits. She was leaner now, harder. Her legs could carry her for hours without rest. Her eyes had learned to read the wind and the ground. She was not, would never be, but she had become something new, something between human and wolf. Other teams stood at the starting line beside them. 7 pairs of handlers and bonded cubs, all trained for years. They looked at with mixed expressions, some with contempt, some with curiosity, a few with respect. Grandmother Nara stood on a raised platform nearby. Her voice carried across the cold air. The warrior's path begins at the sound of the horn, 20 kilometers through the mountains, across the frozen river, through the combat valley. The first team to reach the finish stone wins. Teams that do not complete the path before sunset will be considered failed. She looked directly at. Begin. The horn sounded, the teams ran. Did not try to keep up with the leaders. She knew her limits. The handlers were faster than her, their long legs eating up the ground. Within minutes, she was in last place. But she was not worried. She said softly, "Scout ahead, find the best path." The dark cub nodded and disappeared into the shadows between the rocks. He would run ahead, invisible and silent, and warn them of dangers before they arrived. Continued, "Watch for heat, tell me if anything is hiding." The small cub with mismatched eyes lifted her head. Her strange blue eye glowed slightly as she scanned the path ahead. "Nothing hiding," said in the simple words they had developed together. "Path is clear." "Good, Bara, stay close. When we reach the cliffs, you lead." The limping cub pressed against side. "Ready," she said. They moved together through the mountain path. Set a steady pace, not too fast, not too slow. The cold air burned in her lungs, but she had trained for this. Her body knew what to do. The first challenge came at the frozen river. It was exactly what the name suggested, a wide river completely covered in ice. The teams ahead were crossing carefully, their paws slipping on the frozen surface. 2 cubs had already fallen. 1 handler was bleeding from a cut on his leg. Stopped at the edge and studied the ice. It was thick in some places, thin in others. The thin spots were dangerous. 1 wrong step and you could fall through into the frozen water below. She said, "Can you see the thin ice?" Stepped forward and scanned the river with her heat-seeing eye. Her tail moved slowly back and forth as she worked. "There," she said, pointing with her nose. And there, the dark spots are thin, the bright spots are thick." Nodded. The bright spots made a winding path across the river, not a straight line, but a safe one. "Show me the way," she said. Led them across, step by careful step, following the thick ice, avoiding the thin spots. Behind them heard a crash and a yelp as another team fell through, but she did not look back. They reached the other side safely. 3 teams were already ahead of them, but 2 were behind now, stuck on the ice or pulled from the water by rescue handlers. The next challenge was the combat valley. This was a narrow canyon filled with training obstacles, swinging logs, hidden pits, targets that shot soft arrows at anyone who came too close. It was designed to test fighting skills and quick reactions. Appeared from the shadows ahead. "Danger," he reported, his dark eyes serious. "Many traps, arrows from the walls, pits hidden under leaves. Other teams are stuck, fighting through slowly." Thought quickly. The valley was meant to be fought through, but fighting was slow. There had to be another way. "Is there a path around?" she asked. Shook his head. "Walls too high, cannot climb, except—" He looked at Bora. Understood immediately. She looked up at the canyon walls. They were steep, almost vertical. A normal handler and cub could never climb them, but Bora was not normal. Bora said, "Can you climb those walls?" Bora looked up. Her amber eyes studied the rock face. Then she smiled, a small cub smile that showed her tiny teeth. "Easy," she said. They tied a rope around Bora's chest. The little cub attacked the wall with her powerful front legs, finding holds that seemed impossible, pulling herself up with strength that seemed too big for her small body. In seconds, she was at the top. She lowered the rope, climbed up with strap to her back, scrambled up last, his claws finding holds in the darkness. From the top of the canyon walls, they could walk safely past all the traps below. Other teams were still fighting through, getting hit by arrows, falling into pits, but Pack walked above them all, untouched. By the time they reached the final stretch, they were in second place. Only one team was ahead of them now. The leader was a young handler named, strong and fast, bonded to a perfect silver cub named Storm. The final stretch was a long uphill run to the finish stone. The sun was climbing toward noon, and the air was getting warm, very warm. Began to feel the heat pressing down on her, but she did not slow down. This was her advantage, the one thing no one had expected. Humans could sweat. They could not. They cooled themselves by panting like dogs on Earth, but panting was not efficient. In hot weather, overheated quickly. They had to rest. They had to stop. Did not have to stop. Her human body released heat through her skin. Sweat covered her face and arms, cooling her as the wind blew past. She felt hot, but she could keep moving. She could push through the heat in ways that could not. Ahead she saw Storm slowing down. The young handler was panting hard. His cub was stumbling. The heat was breaking them. "Stay close to me," told her cubs. "Press against my body. My skin is cooler than the air. It will help." The three cubs pressed against her as they ran. Her cooler human body temperature helped them recover, helped them keep moving. They passed Storm. The finished stone appeared ahead, a tall pillar of white rock at the top of the hill. Her legs were burning, her lungs were screaming, but she did not stop. "Together," she gasped, "we finished together." Bora limped beside her, her twisted legs somehow keeping pace. Ran at her back, his dark eyes watching for danger. Pressed against her leg, her mismatched eyes bright with joy. They crossed the finish line together. One human, three broken cubs, first place. The academy waited at the finished stone. Handlers and cubs and guards and elders. They had expected many things, but they had not expected this. Grandmother Nara stepped forward. Her ancient face was unreadable. She studied for a long moment. Then she looked at the three cubs standing proud beside their human handler. "The warrior's path is complete," Grandmother Nara announced. Her voice was strong and clear. "The human and her pack have finished first, 4 hours ahead of the nearest competitor." She turned to address the crowd. "The law of first choosing has been satisfied. The trial of worth has been completed. Let it be recorded in the histories of our people. Lieutenant Park of Earth is a bonded handler of her cubs, Bora, and are warriors of the pack." The crowd erupted. Howls filled the air, the ancient sound of celebration. Some cheered. Some stood in shocked silence, but most of them howled, welcoming a new pack into their world. Dropped to her knees. The three cubs immediately swarmed her. Bora licked her face, pressed his warm body against her back, climbed into her lap, her tail wagging properly for the first time in her life. "You chose me," whispered, tears running down her face. "You crazy, beautiful, broken little wolves. You chose me." Looked up at her with those strange, wonderful mismatched eyes. "You chose us back," she seemed to say. Grandmother Nara stood watching. Her pale gold eyes were soft in a way they had never been before. "The human body," she said quietly to the elder beside her. "We never considered it an advantage. The sweating, the temperature control, we thought it was a weakness." She watched holding her cubs. "We never considered many things." The suns climbed high in the purple sky. The howling slowly faded, and in the center of it all, a human lieutenant from Earth held 3 small cubs who had chosen her over everything else. Because that was what humans did. They did not leave the broken behind. They became pack. And a pack was forever.